let's just kind of get straight into it. Let's dive straight into it. Topic today is bereavement. It's about loss. And let's really get into it in terms of like family loss, because we talk about bereavement, but a lot of things can die in your life. And there could be a lot of different types of deaths. We're going to focus on probably family, but if it evolves from that, we can get into that as well too. I'm excited, guys. I'm like super excited. I'm turning up the energy a bit. If you get hit with something on the camera, I apologize from now. I'm putting out a disclaimer, but we got some fire in the room. So bereavement, let's get into it. I got a little bit of a statement here that I want to read first, and then we'll get into some questions. Guys, feel free to just jump in, chop it up. Whatever feedback you've got, just let's get into it. Bereavement is the period of grief and mourning after death. When you grieve, it's part of the normal process of reacting to a loss. You may experience grief as mental, physical, social, emotional reaction, mental reaction, anger, guilt, physical reactions, sleeping problems, appetite, etc., illness. That's just like a little quick synopsis of what bereavement is. But what I want to do is just kind of, it's no fluff right now, and it's us men being real and transparent. I want to get into your experience, and I'm not going to go first because I've got a raw experience that I want to share with you, because I'm actually going through that bereavement process now. I've had a loss in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to get into that. I lost my uncle, but guys, this is how raw, this is how real it gets. I'm going through it, and I know a lot of you guys have been through it recently, but I want to know, what was your first experience of bereavement?
So I'd say my real proper first experience of bereavement was like 2015 when my granddad passed. That was a tough time. I'm talking like, so you get the call. We got a call basically on about, I think it was Boxing Day. It says granddad had fallen down the stairs, he's in a coma. All the families rushing into the hospital, so on and so forth. And he was a minister, obviously, in church, so it was just literally just people rushing. Then days were going by. I actually didn't leave the hospital for I probably left the hospital maybe 2 times, and they were both to wash and shower and go back and be with my aunties. My dad couldn't get out some work commitments, so he could be there as much as he could, but I just stood in the gap as one of the only males. I'm not the only male, there's loads of males, but one of the only males that was able to be there. Because I'd recently lost my job, so I was already going through my own emotions. But being there in that room, I experienced and heard stories of my granddad. When it got to the 2nd of January 2015, I witnessed my granddad take his last breath. I've never seen anything like that. You watch the movies, it's a completely different emotion. Like the movie's like, oh, okay, that's sad. Now this is like, hold on, so much is flooding through my body. I'm watching somebody finish their race. They're finished, he's done. Like in that moment I was like, this is what life amounts to. Literally in that moment, and I cried. One because my dad cried, because I've never seen my dad cry. I've barely ever seen my dad cry. Wow. So watching my dad cry and my dad saying dad to his dad who's gone now, I'm thinking, I don't want my dad to go. I don't want to go. This thing is hitting me so hard. And then it got to the point where I was like, you know what? If this is what life amounts to, I'm going to make the most of this. So that day, from that day onwards, I used it as motivation. I wrote a bit about it in my chapter for you know what, but literally I just wrote about the fact that was motivation for me to go forward and build legacy, seeing my forefathers go before me and say, I'm going to build on this. And it helped the bereavement process, because I wasn't necessarily mourning, I was motivated.
Wow.
Yes, I cried tears, but I cried tears of joy because I know my life had been awakened. Because prior to that, you could say I was on a wild one. I was on a wild one, living life with no purpose. And as Antonio spoke about in his check-in, it's just like, I've been recognizing that there's things that I have in me that aren't out there. I was living life without purpose. Now I had a purpose. The fact that life now had a meaning. And it was a tough time because my grandma's still there, all my cousins, they needed help and support, the organising the funerals, everyone just coming together, banding together, which brought our family together for a moment. It still was tough on everyone. So being able to witness that in flesh did help my other experiences as well, because there's other experiences I went through after that, because I lost 3 grandparents in 4 years. And technically you could say 4, because my other grandma, she went through a little bit of she had a brain injury, and that caused her not to ever be the same again. So you could say 4 in 4 years. So it's helped me realise that, death in life happens. Death in life happens. Death happens in life. But we just have to make sure that we're ready. And we really can't be ready, but at the same time as well, when that place comes, when that time comes for me, have I got the coping mechanisms? Have I got the structures? Have I got the people around me to hold me up? Yeah. Especially when I'm not thinking straight. So that's me, bro. That's me. My first real experience of death.
Wow. So, can I ask a question on that? Because I think it's good in a good way, because you mentioned that seeing your granddad pass, you use it as motivation to kind of turn your life around. Whilst that's good in the beginning when you saw that in the hospital, from that point, did you ever get to a point where, how can I put it, almost like reality hit, if that makes sense? Because I know you left there feeling motivated, okay, I'm going to use this bad situation and find a silver lining and good for bad. Did you, from that point, have a low point where you were like, where you didn't feel motivated and you had a different kind of emotion, if that makes sense?
I think, personally, I was motivated all the way through. It's because prior to that, I'd had a dip mentally. I'd fallen out with my best friend, who now is my wife, which is funny. Prior to that, I lost my job. Literally, life wasn't going well for me in that moment. So I did have the time to be at the hospital, because I had no job, I had nothing. But what did wake me up, and even then, I remember that Christmas day, I went for a walk and said to myself, I can't have life being the same. Then this happened. I'm not saying it happened for me, but in me, something leaped out at the opportunity to learn more. So when I spent those days in the hospital, I was learning so much about a man that lived a great life. I was here struggling in life. I know life wasn't perfect for him. But then once the passing had happened, that event kind of came to an end, like that, and then it was just a case of the burial and obviously crying a little bit. But I cried a lot and thought a lot, and because I worked through my emotions a bit beforehand, I was literally purely motivated. I'm talking like I was smacking out videos. I think I got 3 jobs. I was like, in the hospital, I was like, I can't live life like this. I'm getting 3 jobs. I'm getting a night job. Not saying, and that's not necessarily good. But I'm getting a night job, I'm getting a day job, and I'm getting a job on the weekends. Like, I'm getting 3 jobs. Like, nothing's going to stop me from building my life back up again. Wow. Why? Because this man just took his last breath. Like, I made all these plans prior, but then that was like the fire. That was the ignition that sparked the fire, the future spark. You know what I mean? But literally, so, bro, I was motivated. Like, I'm talking like crazy. Reality only really hit when life hit me again with other situations and scenarios, like another death in my grandma had a thing in 2016 and my grandma passed in 2017, and life hits. But like I said, this one moment watching the last breath, I can't even explain it. I'm talking, you're seeing the chest expand and it's literally going, I'm not even trying to act, it's literally just and then you literally just hear a calming breath just go. For a moment you're like, still breathing, and everybody in the room still silent, and you're like, this is it, this is what it amounts to. So I need to live my life on purpose. I'm that guy. And literally in that moment, and I'm trying to hold back tears, in that moment I was like, I can't stay in this pit. I'm destined for the palace. I can't stay in this pit. I'm destined for purpose. I can't stay in this pit. I've got too much power inside of me. And that's why I said I'm motivated. I'm still motivated to today. I can still
we feel it.
So sorry, bro, to the long guy you.
We feel it.
I'm being real.
I want to jump back in, and I'm going to bring Antonio into this conversation right now. But Albert Einstein, and I always say this, adversity introduces the man to himself. Wow. It's so powerful what you've just said, but you've taken that pain and you've turned it into purpose. Like literally, you've taken the pain, recycled it, and said, you know what, I'm going to take this as fuel to get me out of the situation that I'm in. Most people don't have that mindset. They don't have that mindset, and we want to talk about that because you made it sound easy. You made it sound really easy, but I know it's not easy. But Antoine, I want to bring you into this conversation. Like, what was your first experience?
So, it's gonna sound crazy now. I've always been very comfortable with death because I've always like had people dying around me, like from young age. But the one that really hit me was also my granddad.
Damn.
And the reason why, because when you normally experience death, it's like, okay, you go there, it's probably your cousin's cousin or your people's people. But when my granddad was my role model, so growing up, I was always with him. Me and my cousin Simeon was always rolling with him, always going on journeys. He was the one that was always giving me the words of wisdom and stuff like that. If I ever needed money, he also used to save up a coins jar and just give us the money to go shop and whatnot. So obviously, when he died, basically at that moment, I kind of was going through a little of a not say a low period, but kind of like a sporadic period that makes sense, where everything was just going wild. But before he died, I remember him saying to me, like a few months before he died, like, all the things that you do now are going to affect you in the future. And that was one of the things that made me really stick. But then I'm like, all right, then if you go, like, how's my brain going to be now? So as he started to get more sick, and obviously he died of cancer, going to the hospital back and forth, I'm like, all right, I'm trying to balance work, trying to do this.
Wow.
But then when I went to work and I was going down to hospital, I got the phone call that he passed away. Now when I got the phone call, now I'm breaking down, I'm on the bus, I don't know how to respond. But on top of that is why that was also hard, and what made that whole situation harder, because the one person I probably would have talked to in that time was my brother, but he was locked up. So then it's like, well, who's really going to be there other than my cousin? Obviously I knew my cousin, because we was both looking after my granddad, always with him. We kind of not to say distance ourselves, but kind of like just handled it the best that we possibly could. We didn't really talk about it. But at that moment, I remember going to the park because I couldn't be in the house, because I remember trying to distance myself from family. I'm like, you guys wasn't really there when he was alive like that, like, and it burned me. So then I'm like, whoa, like, it made me feel rage, if that makes sense. So then I just went to the park and just distanced myself, and I remember there was one person, Shana, that was always on the phone just making sure I was alright and saying, I just need to know you're okay. And at that moment, even though I felt complete anger, that person checking up and making sure I was alright, it literally gave me the peace to know that.
That's good.
At least, like, not say someone cares, but there's someone that can take away what I'm feeling right now, if that makes sense. And like, that was the death where I felt like, I don't know what's about to happen. And it was only till, because I had to create an identity and step into, like, being the man of the family, if that makes sense. Because at that moment I'm like, if you're gone, who's keeping the family together? Who's going to be the man that's going to be the example? Because, like, you're the man, so who's going to be next? So then I'm like, alright, and now, boom, I have to get married, I have to do this, I have to do that. So then I put my own pressure on myself to do that, if that makes sense. And it was only till, literally, 10 years down the line when I went counselling, and the second I went in there, I realised I didn't get no closure or I didn't process the whole death. I just masked it in motivation, if that makes sense. And I created this whole identity, and I created this whole persona of this motivated person because I needed to be this for my granddad. When I went into counselling, the first second I went in there, I cried. So I'm like, it literally caught like it was the first day he died, and that's when I knew that I didn't really process it. I just masked it, and then he broke it down on why I felt like that, and it was just like, well, the amount of love and respect that you have for this man made it hit you harder than anything else it possibly could.
I want to ask you a question just really quickly, because you mentioned that you got the call, so you weren't there. So I always used the experience of the 2015 I was there. 2017 when I got the call from my brother, I wasn't there. And the thing is, what hit me hard was I was in the gym and I was getting calls, but I was ignoring the calls because I'm in the gym, everyone should know I'm in the gym. Then I get a call and a text saying, and it was a different number saying, pick up the call from this person. So brother's like, I said, what's going on? When I got on the phone, he was like, I'll tell you in a second. I said, just get here. I'm like, I knew my grandma was in the hospital, but she was recovering. She was talking and everything. And I get the call and literally she's gone. I'm like, hit me. Felt like I'd been like a ton of bricks. So when I say life hits, when life hits, it hit.
Yeah.
I realised that I had no time to process what was going on. It was literally like that. Whereas with my granddad, I was there, and I got time to process. So maybe it's a case as well with the whole processing thing. We're so busy in life, and obviously in one of the previous episodes we get into that because it talks about, you know, the rat race. This is another part of it. It's not just about the money. How about time with family?
Yeah.
Because time with family, I personally, and it's a personal opinion, think it will help in the bereavement process.
Yeah.
Because you're then happy. You know you've kind of, and I don't want to say it like this, kind of done enough.
Yeah.
Because when you're guilty, that can definitely hit you as well. When you're thinking, yo, I should have spent time.
Yeah. I should
have.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't want to live that life. So I don't know how that.
Yeah,
that
I
is.
think
Jump back in.
it's a hard one because that call literally hit me like a ton of bricks, and the reason why, 'cause I didn't accept it. Like, even though he said it, I'm like, well, you must be lying. Like, because realistically, like, even though I know you're sick, why would you be dead? Like, it don't make sense. And like, what I was most angry at the time, especially 'cause I remember I was on the bus coming there, because I was going to the hospital to see him. So it's not like, in my head, I'm like, if the bus was 10 minutes before, I'm like, but there's nothing I can do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what made me distance myself, because I was just kind of like, I couldn't accept it. I mean, honestly, I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept it.
That's deep.
I'm going to jump back in for a sec, and just to kind of conclude that, I'm going to bring you in, James, because I want to hear your experience as well too. I think death reveals the cracks, not just in your family, but in your life. That's what it does. Like I was saying before, it introduces you to yourself, and if there's no substance inside, or if there's nothing that you've actually invested previously, it hits you differently. So that investment in family, important, because that's the foundation for your kind of core. But then the investment in yourself, that's another foundation. You've got to build those two foundations. When things do hit you, you've got something to lean on. And obviously, if you have faith, that's a whole different level. Whole different level. But James, let me hear from yourself, your first experience. And I know that personally, we know you've had multiple deaths.
So my first one, and you lot kind of set me off when you was talking. I could feel it already. It was my granddad's.
Come on, man.
To give some context, from the moment I was born, I've always been at my nan and my granddad's house. Every single day, not some days, every single day. So I get up in the morning, get ready from Wolverhampton, go to my nan's house and go to school. Finish school and go to my nan's house. Saturday, nan's house. Sunday, everyone goes to nan's house. Christmas, that's there. It's at the point where my granddad, I don't even call him granddad, I call him dad, or he's Daddy Fletcher. Up until the point he died, I was 30 plus years, I still called him Daddy Fletcher. This was literally like a father figure to me. With him, he was getting old, into his 80s, and I remember one time, I was living at home just like yourself, because I mean, we were quite similar. I was living at home, and then one time he couldn't make up the stairs, trying to get up the stairs, and I tried to help him get up the stairs, he couldn't get up there. And we was there for ages, 45 minutes, he couldn't get up there. And then he had to stay downstairs, and we had to call the family to come around and see if he was okay. And then I remember one day, I was in my room, and I heard a massive bang. And I ran into the bathroom, and my granddad, I was going to go now. He fell over and he banged his head. And then my aunt, she ran in, and we were both there, and I remember him saying, "I'm sorry." And he was crying and saying, "I'm sorry," because he felt like he was a burden. And we had to call the ambulance to check him out before it might be serious damage. The ambulance comes and started taking him into some tests. And he went into hospital, and he never came out. They were saying basically he's got to a certain age. I think he has some kind of cancer, whatever it is. And I remember going to see him, similar to yourself. He had the mask on, and he was gone, not gone, but like he was, we call it travelling and so forth. And they were going to put him into a separate room. And what was weird about that season is, I think it must have, because again, for me, when I've had a number of deaths in my life, and again I was writing my book, and when you go through things like this, it's hard to remember. Sometimes your mind forgets things or blocks things out. He actually came home one time, and we had family prayer meeting every Monday, and there's one prayer meeting, he was upstairs in the bed because he couldn't come downstairs, so we all gathered around the bed, we had a prayer meeting, and literally, like, obviously I can preach and teach, I've never prayed. I mean, I prayed before in a church, and I've opened my eyes and I finished praying, and people are in the spirit and not on the floor. I mean, I prayed that night from my soul. I could feel it in my diaphragm. And he was lying on the bed like this, and he was smiling. And I don't know what he was looking at in the sky, but he was smiling. Do you know what I mean? Fast forward, they go to the hospital. He's now put into a separate room. And then there's a call from the family saying, look, it's not looking good. The concern for the worst come down. So I'm in Dudley Port, driving towards Dudley. So I spin the car around, rush to the hospital, I meet my cousin there. And we get inside, and we're walking up. And as one of the doors was there, as I'm walking, the nurse just went, he's gone. And I went, what do you mean he's gone? She goes, he's gone. And I went in there, I was like yourself, seen him there, and I just broke. And it's a situation, especially as a man, because there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hardest things with bereavement is you got to understand sometimes, as you said, death is a part of life. And I had this with my nanny as well, like, sometimes as Christians we want to pray for someone and you're begging God and you're fasting and you're praying. But the reality is this, even Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, but guess what? He had to die again. So that means even if you do recover, at some point you cannot escape it. It's something we all have to deal with. And that's the point where I was at. And what was hard, because me and my cousin was there, I went straight into the bathroom in his own private room. I was bawling and bawling and bawling, and then everyone's coming to the hospital, and you've got to relive it again, because every person walks in and breaks down. And we got about 22 of us. So each time people are walking in one by one, and it breaks. So you're broken and you're crying, trying to get your composure. Then someone else comes in and sets you off. And then with some people, you can't tell them on the phone when they're driving, because you don't know what they're going to do. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that just broke me. And the only way I can put it was like this, as you mentioned, I had an experience in my life where it broke me. And the only way I can put it is like, if you imagine inside your body, you've got like a scaffold, but the scaffold's gone and you feel like you're going to collapse. I collapsed emotionally. And I think because that happened earlier, it kind of prepared me and helped me to deal with this. But even my granddad died, man, like, I couldn't even talk. I remember going to the shop and I'd be walking, I'd stay in my own room for days, man. But in terms of coping mechanism, as you mentioned, I think family is an important thing. And I know I don't want to get too spiritual, but it's true. I think prayer is important with a family. I think if you don't pray, at least check in. Like, my family is type where we have prayer meetings and we sit down and say, look, everyone deals with grief or bereavement differently. So you might be motivated and you're cool, but you're not. You need a phone call. I'm not. I'm broken on the inside. So I think as a coping mechanism, it's important that we come together. And again, I've experienced things recently in the Brotherhood. Everyone's reached out to me, and vice versa to other people. I think it's good to have people around us to make sure. But that's my first experience in that.
So I'm going to ask the question, I'm going to pose it to the group. So what happens when a family don't talk? Because obviously your family, it sounds amazing where everyone's connecting, like, yo, okay, this is it. But in the same scenario where when we got hit with multiple deaths, nobody's ever spoke about it. It's just never spoke. Even to this day. Like, it's just like...
What I would say to that person is, I just mean general in life, if you see an issue and a problem, try your best to deal with it. I mean, you may come against obstacles where you say to the family, okay, let's meet together, let's talk. And some people might turn up, some people might not turn up, but you can't force people. But you can only do what you can do. But at least, as you said, you know you've tried. Do you know what I mean? And if you're in a situation where you don't have a tight family, you've hit the nail on the head. There's counselling, or there's friends, or there's people in church. But I would strongly suggest not to deal with it on your own. You might want to deal with it on for a period of time, but at some point, it's good to talk. Do you know what I mean? And get that emotion. Because as you said, you went a while as only went to counselling all that time. If you said that you felt like the same that your granddad passed. And I think there's a lot of people watching this now that don't deal with it. I know people that will keep themselves busy on purpose. I don't want to deal with it. I made sure, me personally, when I'll go into it later, I had multiple deaths. The first thing I make sure I do, I try and cry as much as possible. I put on certain songs that I know that are related to death and bereavement. I want to cry. I want to deal with my emotions. I want to get this. I want to process it. I don't want to ignore it. I don't want to be in denial and ignore it. I'm saying, me personally.
You know, the thing is, what bothered me though, and this is something that really got to me and why I'm also talking about it and bringing it up now, masculinity. Because I personally, when my granddad died, believed that I shouldn't be the one crying.
Yeah.
I gotta be strong.
Wow.
I've got to be that person.
But I think that-
and when I'm seeing, and I remember seeing my cousins and people crying, I'm like, and I really, when I look back, I should have consulted them and say, "Yo, are you okay?" But in my head, I'm like,
Yeah.
But I think this is where part of the learning process, and I want to put this out there for anyone that is feeling it, to speak about it more, because believe me, people are going through it as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask, like what kind of advice would you give to people, like, on top of some of the stuff they've already shared? What more advice would you give?
Don't run away from it.
Yeah.
I could tell you, there's situations that I know even still to this day that I won't accept, and it's me being 100% because my brain can't fathom it. But then I've chosen to. It's gonna sound crazy not to accept it, to keep that memory alive.
Yeah.
But at some point, I've got to process it. If that makes sense, and that's something that I would advise anyone to do. Because even with my granddad situation, I opened it up, where like I've been running away from this for 10 years, and I've not really looked into it. And I've seen everything that I've built was built on this facade that I was this strong, motivated, passionate person. When not to discredit anything that I was, because that's really who I am, but I've done it out of fear. If that makes sense.
It's the root, finding what the root is.
I would say there's understand. I know it's very difficult. I think when it happens and it's fresh, especially with someone close to you, the initial response is, I can't imagine how life will ever be the same again. And in some cases, I don't even want it. I don't want to continue with life. If that person's not here, I don't want to be here because my life's empty now. You spoke about purpose, and the reality is again that I don't want to get all spiritual, but God knew when certain people were going to die.
Yeah.
And although you're going through pain right now, a song I've been listening to all week, it's weird, it's by Kurt Franklin. It's After a While, these two shall pass after a while. And it hurts and it's painful now, but when you start to deal with it, there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is beauty for ashes. There is motivation in it as well. Something that Elder Kevin said to me, and I think it's very powerful and it's very profound, is that when someone dies, grief is about you as an individual, how it affects you, how I feel, and the impact on my life. When we can move from grief to mourning, it's about that person you mentioned celebrating their life, celebrating their legacy, giving thanks for what they've done. Because as you just said, you can give thanks for your granddad, because now, because of his life and what you've seen him do, it's now motivated me to continue the legacy. And that word is beautiful. I mentioned my nan's funeral. It's a legacy. So your granddad had a legacy. Do you know what I mean? So once we finish mourning, as God said to Joshua, Moses, my servant, is now dead. But at some point, now arise, get up, arise. Now I'm moving to your purpose. Moses took you to this point. Now we're going to another level. So I think us as young men or people watching here right now, if your mother's died, your granddad's died, or someone's died, honour their legacy by continuing it. I would say
that was it.
So this is the thing this is where I find it hard, because with my granddads, I accepted that they've lived their life, they've got a legacy. We are a living representation of their legacy. But there's two scenarios, and two of my friends, and it's happened with most friends, but these are the two that hit me, where they died actually pretty young, if that makes sense. So one of them died when he was like 25, and it was literally through misconduct of the doctors, and the other one literally got stabbed up and died. But in them scenarios, I'm like, but you ain't even lived your life yet, if that makes sense. So that's what made me like
think that way.
Well, realistically, it's all right when you're old and you got your legacy and stuff. Not all right, but you've lived your life. But when you're young, how do you then process the legacy side of it? Because I'm still, even, and this is me being real, even now I'm like, you guys died too young. It's not like you were bad people and you done a bad miss, and you were godly people that literally, your lives were dedicated to God and being good and living the right way. And then something happens that literally takes you away, and it's like, well, you haven't lived your legacy yet, you haven't experienced life yet.
And I want to jump in because my experience has been different. And I wasn't going to share because you guys got in the granddad feed, which is good. But mine was like, I was very young, my first experience, and I was actually dating someone. I don't know, it's probably about 15. It's about 15, basically. This person I was dating, we were very good friends together. and then we kind of split up, but we were still friends. But she got killed by someone that I knew at the age of like 15, 16, killed, like brutally murdered. And because I had been interacting with her and stuff, I had to go police station and all this kind of stuff. So someone that I actually loved and was with got killed, and then I was basically could have been the person that killed her, kind of thing. So I was going through two different things. Like, I've lost someone, now I'm getting looked at as a criminal as well too.
Jeez.
Deep for me. Like, I haven't really talked about it as much. My mum knew because she had to take me to the police station and stuff like that. But I get what you're saying in terms of when you're young and someone goes, it affects you differently because you're just thinking about what their life could have been, what their life could have been, what they could have become. As for me, in terms of that, I'm not really deep too much. It always replays. I haven't talked to anyone about it. I'm sharing it now because I think it's fitting. But it's something that I do need to talk about it more. It's just crazy, but I understand and I get it. I'm still going on that journey.
So do you feel like that impacted you and how you lived your life?
It did impact me in many different ways that I don't even know about because I was so young and I didn't know how to process it. But you know, it's just one of them ones.
Just to jump in on that as well, to add, and I'm going to go somewhere with this. You mentioned obviously young people. We talked about our granddads, as you mentioned. I think it's a good point, and that's a fair point because the people watching here that I was like, yeah, that's cool. As you just said, for grandparents, go accept the whole, you lived your life, etc., etc. As you know, in COVID, I had one where multiple deaths. One was another granddad, but again lived his full life. But one was my auntie and the uncle, and they were pretty young. And to go with what you're saying, and this is something I've wrestled with, and again, thing for me, therapy is writing. And even as I was writing this, I think in life, and to be and someone can, if you're watching this and you got an answer, feel free to put a comment and educate us. But I think sometimes in life, for whatever reason, and we dealt with it in Tuesday. We talked about the sin issue where people got a free will, and especially talking about murder and stuff like that. And we ask questions, why God? And sometimes it can come to the answer what I did. You blame God. When my auntie died, I mentioned before in episode 2, mental health. I went a good 6 months without praying and fasting because I'm angry with God because how can you let this happen? I'm praying, we're fasting, and she's young. If my granddad, I can call, I can accept that. And I'm just like yourselves, I'm on that journey. And if I'm honest with you, I don't think we're always going to be at a point where we have all the answers, because all of us here are quite logical, and we want to say, okay, if you can give it me, God, in a certain process, then I can fathom it, I can understand it, I can rationalize it, I can make it logical, and I can deal with it. What we're struggling with, we're trying to find something. This doesn't add up.
We need an answer.
I need an answer. And the reality is sometimes in life, there's a lot of people, just like yourself and me right now, we may never get an answer until you cross over to the other side.
That's the truth.
That's the reality of it. And I'll go back to what I said before. Death is not fair. Something we have to deal with, everyone. And in sometimes injustice in our eyes is unfair.
That's deep, you know.
Do you know what I mean? And we want to get answers. And there's many things, not just death. You mentioned about different types of death and different injustices. We see things in America with all the killings, etc., etc., etc. But the reality is, we don't know. Do you know what I mean? Something that someone else said too. So I join a bit. Some people say, "Oh, God allowed it to happen because God wanted the flower in His garden." It's, nah, bro. You telling me God allowed it to happen? Nah. I don't like that, man. Nah, man. Things like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, bro. To be honest with you.
So I think we try to like James says, we like to rationalise too much. I think there has to be a willingness to accept the unanswered question. So there's still an acceptance in there which can bring you an element of comfort, but at the same time as well, you just know that there's still a dot next to this whole thing. It goes back to what you said, how do you get a family to talk? or accept the fact that they may not answer your question when you ask your question, but like James said, at least you tried. And I think this is the thing, at least you tried to mourn, get past the grief and get to the place of mourning. Because I think if you see grief as like a brick wall, we need to just smash at it like a hammer. So use the processes and the strategies we have in place, personal opinion again, to get over grief. Because when we get to mourning is actually a blessed thing, the Bible says, and again, not trying to make it spiritual, but this is our lives, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. There's a comfort that comes in the place of mourning. It doesn't mean you're not going to be sad, but it's like these emotions are flowing, let them flow, don't hold them back. Me and some schoolmates lost a friend when we were in our 20s, so very early 20s, but we used to link up every quarter. Everyone from school used to link up every quarter for years. A few events happened and he ended up falling off the side of the motorway, like a gust of wind flew him. Lorry went past the side of the motorway. No one could find him. Everyone still went out. So the next day you're getting calls on your phone like 8 a.m. in the morning, where's this person, where's this person, where's this person? I was like, I don't know, like I last saw him when he went to the club and I left the club an hour after you guys, so Next thing you know, he fell off, died in the air, all that sort of stuff. It was nasty, gruesome. But what that made me realise is that I'm still here. I'm still here. So the question when people are asking, why did you take that person? I often ask the question personally for me, why am I still here? Why am I here? And that's why when I said I found that almost like a sense of purpose in that moment, I ran on that answer question because God gave me the word, legacy. He gave me 2 words, legacy and blueprint. So I ran with the blueprint, same last name, we're going to run with this, blood running through my veins, DNA running right through me. I had a word, I had an answer to the question. I didn't have all the answers because realistically I'm like, the house just got fixed up. How's he falling down the stairs? How did he get to the bottom of the stairs? Why can he wake up? You know what I mean? If you allowed him to stay this long in the hospital, why can't he just wake up? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many questions, but I had a willingness to answer, to accept, the unanswered questions. And there's a great book, actually, good reference for anyone that wants to read it. It's called Hope in a Dark Place. It's called Hope in a Dark Place by a guy called Craig Groeschel. He's a pastor, but he also, as well, he's a life coach. And he talks about, and not to get into the book, he talks about the unanswered questions. And there's some deep topics around bereavement, deep topics around life, because there is hope in a dark place. And trust me, when you find it once, you know that it's always there. And that's why I said my first experience helped me through the rest of my experiences and helped me in hindsight look at the other experiences and find a purpose in those. That's for me though.
Wow. And I think we're just kind of concluding now and we're going to summarise, but there are 5 stages of grief. So denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. So I think we've kind of talked about all of these stages and gone through all of these different processes. But there are organisations out there that can help you. Mind is an organisation, and they talk about talk therapies and treatments involving working with professionals. Talk about your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviour. I think that's just a great start. Talk about it. You talked about counselling. Great as well too. And there's some cultures, they run away from counselling. They think counselling and say, oh no, you're mad. If you go to counselling, there's something wrong with you. You've got problems or issues, but it's not about that. There might be something wrong with you, but you've got to bring that out to the forefront. Be authentic, be open, and allow that person to help you and support you through your emotions. I know, Antonio, you want to say something, jump in.
So I want to ask a question, because this is something that I'm personally going to ask you, and I want everyone else to chip in as well. Because I remember at the time you went through multiple bereavements. And I remember messaging in the group and like, sorry, condolences, whatnot. But I personally felt like that wasn't enough, if that makes sense. Like, how do you then speak to, even when your friends may lose a family member, how do you then say to your friend, yo, like, I say, are you okay? But like, like,
do you know what? That is so crazy. And the reason being, I had the same conversation literally yesterday with a friend because they were mourning the loss of a family member, and my response to them was this: I don't even know what to say in situation like this. Going back to what I said earlier, it's a situation where there's nothing I can do. I remember, I think it was Nathan Dennis, dealing with one of the guys in Future Spark when they lost a family member, and he said, "There's nothing I can do, but let's go for some food and let's talk." And all I'd say to you is this, bro: just be there. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything. I remember there's a film, Why Did I Get Married To? If you watch the film, when Janet Jackson smashed up the place, you sit on the stairs and her friends come in and all they do is just sit there with her. No one's talking, they're just sitting there. And sometimes just your presence just checking on people, just sitting there with them, just being there. So the reality is, there's nothing you can say or do, bro. You know what I mean? You can say certain things that are nice, but you can't bring that person back. That's the reality of it, which is very sad. So all you can do is check in on them. And what I always say, I said to other guys in this group, I've said, look, I don't know if you're a person that likes your space. I like my space. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know if you're a person that needs to hear people's voices. So I ask the person, what do you need? And then based upon what they need is how I'm going to respond. Do you know what I mean? That's all you can do. Ask them the question and then respond accordingly. And there's one more thing I was going to say, because I know we're going to wrap up. Because as Alex was talking, just one thing that came to mind about the whole injustice thing and not understanding. Again, I don't want to get all spiritual, but it is what it is. I remember back to the book of Job, when he lost everything. Lost all his family members, lost his animals, everything. And he came to the point where he, just like us, he wanted, and what is going on? And this is a hard thing to take. He started questioning God, like, what's going on? And all God would say was, when I created the heavens and the earth, where were you? In other words, the same way you would talk to your children that ask the question is, hold on, do you pay the mortgage yet? Do you pay the bills yet? It's a hard truth to take. But that's the reality of it as well. It's not an easy saying, and going back to what I said, we're looking for answers, but even Job never got the answers, but he got double for trouble in the end, but he never got the answers he wanted at that particular time. So I think when we're watching this now, people might be looking here and looking for an answer, but sometimes the answer is there is no answer, and accepting that and being able just to move forward rather than staying here. It's like grieve. Okay, I'm not going to get an answer for this. Let me move forward. Let me mourn. Let me move forward.
That's it, bro.
And just closing. I know this topic is just just to add to that, and I know you want to jump in as well too. I think you are the answer in that whole process, and it's accepting that whatever you do, whatever decision you make, choice you make, that's when you'll get your answer. But you've got to open up to yourself and understand that the answer is actually inside. But I've got to do these steps to get to that place. So the answer starts with you.
100.
Antonio?
Exactly that. What I want to close up on is just the stages of grief one more time, and then making people understanding where they are in that stages of grief. That makes sense, because that's a bigger one where you might think you're in acceptance, but really in denial.
That's when you've got to get that professional help.
I would say so,
and get those talk therapies happening to understand where you're at, what stage are you at, because they will recognize the traits, the personality, the characteristics of where you're at. So you can't do it by yourself, but go and find the help. Put your hand up and say, you know what, I'm struggling, I need help. That's where it starts. When you hold on to it, it just eats you. So say help. Somebody help me.
Definitely.
But that's it in closing. So guys, thank you so much for being here, for your input today. It's been absolutely phenomenal. We could talk so much more about this topic, and we might have to do a part 2. But anyone that's out there that needs support, reach out to us, Future Spark, message someone, get some help, jump online, do some research, but don't do it by yourself. In the multitude of counselors there is safety. All right guys, so bless you. Awesome.